information. This is the welcome everybody to this meeting of the Planning Committee. We're recording the meeting this evening using our webcasting system. The webcast will be transmitted live and will also be available on the Council's website following the meeting. Generally, the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. I have the discretion to stop or suspend the recording of the meeting should this be necessary to maintain the proper running of the meeting. This is a meeting of the Council which is held in public. It is not a public meeting. All mobile devices should be switched to off or set to silent so that the meeting is not interrupted by ringtones. Anyone else intending to film or audio record any part of the meeting is asked to do so in a manner that does not disrupt the meeting. And please refrain from filming the public gallery or public speakers on items. If the fire alarm sounds, leave by the nearest exit and meet by Wilkinson's. Officers will be able to advise when it is safe to return to the meeting. Our procedure for each item will be that the planning officer will present their report and then committee members will ask any points of clarification. The meeting will be taken out of session to allow those who have given notice that they wish to address the committee on a particular application to do so. Each person will be invited to come forward to the table at the front of the public seating area and will have 3 minutes to give their views. And that will be indicated by the traffic lights on my desk here. Once all comments have been given, the meeting will then continue for members of the committee to discuss the application and to reach a decision. No further comments may be made by members of the public once the meeting has been reconvened. Thank you. Now, the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. An apology for absence from Councillor Sargent with Councillor Turson as substitute. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any declarations of interest and lobbying to declare? Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to item 4, I visited the site last year with other councillors to have a walk around. I have an open mind on this application because it was different to what was suggested at the start. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brockman.
Thank you, Chair. I've been lobbied on item 4.
Are there any other declarations other members wish to make? No? No. Thank you for that. We'll move on then to item 3, which are the minutes of the meeting, which was held on the 10th of January, which is a supplement to your agenda. I hope you've all had a chance to read that. And can I have a show of hands for those that are in favour of the minutes, please? Okay, and those and abstentions? That's 2 abstentions. Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. The next item on the agenda is item 4. Just in time. Okay, we're moving on to item 4, which is planning application number 23/00881/OUT. And I'm going to hand over to Ms Ellis to present.
Thank you, Chairman, and evening all.
Excuse me, just a second. Ms Brown, did you have any declarations of interest? Thank you very much. Sorry about that, Ms Ellis.
Thank you. This application relates to 200 London Road in Wickford. For you can see the location of the site. planning permission or outline planning permissions is being sought with all matters reserved except access for the demolition of the existing buildings, structures and hard standing and the erection of up to 49 residential dwellings with open space and associated infrastructure, including main vehicle access point onto London Road. As said, 200 London Road is being demolished. All those buildings in the grey, on the previous plan, you can see that better, are being demolished, and there is an extensive level of hard standing also that's going to be removed from the site. So the site is partially previous developed land. Again, this just shows an aerial site plan of the site itself, to the north of London Road. Here before you actually are, this plan is actually included within the officer report. And I think many of you get black and white copies, so this is a coloured version of it, which just shows the landscape sensitivity of the site. The yellow line is the application site. I mean, the whole site there was previously an allocation, but it has assessed the landscape of the site. The dark purple colours is the highest landscape sensitivity, and the lilac colour is the lower landscape sensitivity. Again, this is another plan that's in the officer report, and it's black and white for you, but this is the colour version showing the whole site. As you remember from the previous plan, the yellow line indicates where the application site is that we are considering today. So you'll see again, it just shows where existing vegetation is. The watercourse, you've got the River Crouch to the north of the site. There are no existing footpaths that go through the site, but there is one in close proximity to the whole site. And then you've got the yellow arrows which show key connections. So you can see here that you've got a key connection here onto London Road, and there is one that's shown on this particular one to the Plotland area. But that's just a colour plan for you to see. As I said, you guys tend to see the black and white colours. So moving on, this is an illustrative site plan. It shows the layout of the site. It's indicative. So there's 49 dwellings that are proposed with car parking, sort of landscaping. But all these are reserved for a later stage, except the access, which has been considered today as part of the application, and that leads out onto London Road, as you can see there. These are site photos, so if I just run through a few of them with you, I know Councillor Myers did mention he'd already attended site last year. So you can see on the left-hand side of the photo, you've got 200 London Road. That is to be demolished. You've got an existing access into the site, which runs down to the rear of the site, and these are the outbuildings that you can see on the right-hand side. So the blue building, I've only shown some of the site, not all of it, but you can see these are the outbuildings. You can see the sort of state that the buildings are currently in, a bit of disrepair. There's some old stables on there. There is a storage of caravans as well on the site. It's quite a lot of caravans actually that sit on the periphery of the hard standing. On the right hand side, this is a view looking towards the rear of the site, so towards the River Crouch. And you can see there sort of the hard standing as well. Okay, so this application is in the green belt. It is an inappropriate development. However, there is part of the site is PDL. 43% of the site is actually PDL, which does weigh in its favour. The impact on openness in this case is to be considered as limited, given the existing condition of the site itself. Also, there is a sort of a limited impact on the purposes of the green belt. Purposes being A and C, which relates to unrestricted sprawl and safeguarding the countryside. So it's considered that limited impact would contribute towards the purpose of the green belt, given the current existing situation. Very special circumstances have been put forward by the applicant. These are 35% affordable housing, which we considered to be a significant figure. I mean, the council, as you're aware, only has a 1.85 years of land supply. In terms of economic, moderate weight has been given to the employment, construction, sort of increased expenditure within the area, and this includes sort of money towards council tax in the future should this be successful. Environmental benefits have been given moderate weight, and these include effective use of the PDL land. As I said, they're looking to remove the hard standing, the outbuildings. Part of this will sort of remediate the land as well. the development will also support the use of sustainable transport, and also there is contributions to improve a walking route in Wickford. There will also be improved enhanced landscaping, biodiversity and ecology, and would improve sort of in drainage on the site. As I said before, removal of hard standing outbuildings on the site and remedy the land. In terms of social, this has also been given moderated by officers. The contribution of affordable housing and market housing towards our 5-year land supply. Delivery skills and training, sort of the local workforce, construction opportunities that are given through a training skills plan that was also is required by Section 106. And new areas of landscape open space within the development. As I said, we've weighed this sort of in favour to grant recommendation to grant the application, and there are a series of conditions that are set out on page 60 of the officer report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms Ellis. Would you like, for the benefit of the public, to explain what PDL is?
Sorry, it's previous developed land. So as it's already been built on, hard standing has been laid, outbuildings are sited on the land. We've also had an LDC that came in last year now, that determined that the land is previous developed land. So that's what PDL stands for, is previously developed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rimmer, you want to ask a question?
Yes, apologies. Obviously, I wasn't at the technical briefing last night, so there might have been some questions that I would have raised there that I am going to raise today. So in respect of the PDL, there's mention, obviously, the hard standing with the caravans. What proportion of the 43% PDL is actually hard standing and only hard standing?
We can't see the sorry, Ryan, can you get the presentation again? Sorry. The location plan in front of you, I don't know how clearly you can see that from where you're sitting, but so you've got the access that goes into the site, and can you see that squiggly line? That is the area of the hardscaping on the site, and obviously you've got the buildings that are in grey. So that area there is 43% previous developed land. Like I said, I don't know if you can see it that well, but it's the line that sort of goes around, sort of squiggly line. That's all the hard standing. Oh yeah, aerial. Yeah, that might be better. Yeah, can you see that there? Let me zoom in. Why can't I zoom in? So all that area in white with the outbuildings as well, that is the area of previous developed land.
Councillor Rimmer, you wish to come back?
Yes, Chair, and I don't know if it would help. I'm sorry, you're still got your mic on. If I went through all the other questions as well, because we've got 5 other questions, but just on that particular one, that's visually aided me, but it hasn't answered my question in terms of the proportion of the 43% that's hard standing, because obviously I've got to weigh that up in terms of the openness of the green belt or not, because that argument's been put forward, the 43% versus the 57%, and I just want to have a greater understanding of that in terms of the actual numbers, so that would be useful. Just on to the other questions, from my understanding of the charts you showed us with the sensitive and highly sensitive green belt with the purple area that was within the yellow zone, and then the following map, it seemed to suggest that that purple fringe there would not be developed upon. That is, so yes, I'm just checking, but I was correct in my understanding. Have we got a scorecard in terms of the greenbelt, this area of greenbelt, in terms of the matrix of the tests of greenbelt, and to what extent it's strategic greenbelt or not? We had those in the past, and I couldn't quite see that. In terms of the badger conditions, obviously the badgers protection people were consulted, and they were not too happy first time round because it was an undocumented survey. And the second time round, one of their key conditions that they asked for was a survey 4 weeks before and construction was to commence, but I couldn't actually see that in the conditions. I know we have probably tried to capture those conditions at a high level. I appreciate that, but I do feel that from my reading that we may have missed a couple of points that they've raised, such as the removal of any scrub that might be blocking any sets, because they believe there is evidence of badgers having used the site. The town council mentioned flood areas and flood zones, and suggested that one part of the outline, I think it was the 200 London Road, was not in flood zone 1, but beyond that. I wanted to check, was it in a higher level of flood zone or not? And Anglian Water mentioned foul drainage from the developments, and said that there wouldn't be capacity at the Whitford Water Recycling Centre for that foul drainage. Now they're saying that they would obviously take necessary steps, but are we comfortable with that? Is that dealt with anywhere in the report? And so those are my questions of clarification, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Right, with regards to PDL, the 43% is the hard standing, the grey area in front of us. That is 43% of this whole site, which we consider to be PDL. The score, you mentioned the scorecard matrix of Greenbelt. I'm not quite sure what you meant by that.
I think.
Oh, right, okay, the purposes that we were referring
Yeah,
to.
we've got the purposes
okay.
on page 25, but I think perhaps, Councillor Rimmer, if you can correct me, you wanted to know how much weight is put on each one?
Yeah, so the site only partially contributes towards A and C, which A relates to unrestricted sprawl and C relates to safeguarding. I have gone into more detail on the report, but we've said that the limited weight we've applied to this on the basis that the site has been previously developed before, okay, albeit 43%, but we were giving weight to that. With regards to the purposes, like I say, it partially contributes towards A and C, which is unrestricted sprawl, safeguarding, but limited weight is applied to this because it is previously developed land. So 43%, which is the grey area that you may be able to see in front of you, that is 43% of the site, and that's what we consider to be PDL. And obviously 50% is undeveloped, 57% is underdeveloped. I think you then went on to the badgers, was that right? The badgers, yes. So the badger man, yeah, he did have concerns regarding the surveys that were provided. We did go back, the agent did provide us with further surveys, which obviously the badger man wasn't overly happy with, but these are within conditions 8, which relates to the construction environment management plan biodiversity, and condition 20, which relates to, I mean, there are no badgers on the site, there are no sets, however, it was identified that, you know, badgers do pass the site. And also, I think I might have asked for further... No, so yeah, so like I say, it is captured, the concerns of the badger man is captured in condition 8, the biodiversity construction environment management plan, and condition 20, and 21 as well. That's what I was looking for, and condition 21 as well, where we are asking for updated surveys for this.
Ms Ellis, could you turn your mic off a moment? Councillor Rimmer, were there any more, was that covering what you wanted, or were there any other questions?
Yes, I've put 2 other questions, but in respect to the badgers, I do think that the condition doesn't go far enough, because they have asked specifically for this pre-construction survey. I can't see that in 21, where it's specifically asking for a survey specifically on badgers, and I can't see anything in condition 8 there I mean, if you can point that to me, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, so
but it looks like it's all
21M of condition 1. We're asking for a landscape and ecology management plan, so it falls under that.
Is that pre-construction?
Yeah, any information that's come forward, any of them,
I see.
Well, yeah, I mean, for us lay people, it might be worth spelling that out to us on supplements in the future, how those, or in the report, of the body of the report even, to show how those concerns have been mitigated, because obviously I see that and it doesn't unpack it enough for me, but obviously I trust you on that, that's fine. The other two questions obviously were, as I said, about the flood areas in respect of 200 London Road, Wickford, which has been mentioned as being outside of flood zone 1. Is that in a higher flood zone? And what mitigations are there for that? And the point made by Anglian Water as a consultancy in respect to foul drainage.
Yeah, so with regards to if I start with Anglian Water first, just because I've got it in front of me. So yeah, the foul drainage, there is a catchment for, in this area for the Wickford Water Recycling Centre. Anglian Water are obligated by law to take on this water from the scheme. And actually within their consultation response, they do say the foul drainage from the development in the catchment of Wickford Water Recycling Centre, which currently does not have capacity to treat the flows, the development from the development site, Anglian Water are obliged to accept the foul flows from the development with the benefit of planning consent, and would therefore take the necessary steps to ensure that there is sufficient treatment capacity should the planning authority grant planning permission. So that falls outside of our remit for planning, but that's what their consultation response, that they are obliged to take those flows from the site. But and you referred to flood zone, didn't you? Yes. So if I go back to that one, so can you see the dark grey line that goes sort of curves around the edge of the location plan? That's the River Crouch. So the majority of the site does fall within flood zone 1. However, there is a small part of the site that falls in flood zone 2 and 3, and that captures, I'll say like the little leg bit of the site up the top there. So that area site does fall in flood zones 2 and 3, but as you will see from, this is illustrative, the site plan, there is no development in that area. So that will be where the landscaping, I mean, layout is a matter for at a later stage, but there will be no development in that area. So it's that little sliver of land at the edge there, that little sort of leggy bit that falls within flood zones 2 and 3, but the majority of the site is flood zone 1.
Wish to come back, Councillor?
Yeah, so just to, obviously the Town Council have specifically called out 200 London Road, Wickford, as falling outside of flood zone 1, and I believe from the report, you know, that is part of the development, and they have stated, can it be taken out of the development? Obviously we can't, we can only consider what's in front of us, but specifically in respect of 200 London Road, which flood zone does that fall in under then?
The actual dwelling itself that's already there at the moment, is that what you're referring to? That falls in flood zone.
Yes, that's what the
flood
Town
zone
Council.
1.
Yeah,
so that falls in flood zone 1, that particular dwelling there.
So just to be clear, the Town Council are incorrect in saying it's outside of flood zone 1.
The existing dwelling that currently exists at 200 London Road falls within flood zone 1.
And just to be extra clear, there's absolutely no part of this development that falls outside of flood zone 1.
Say that again, sorry.
Just to be absolutely clear, there would be no part of this development that falls outside of flood zone 1.
Falls outside of flood zone 1.
Yes, so I'll rephrase it. Just to be clear, all of the development is in flood zone 1.
All of the built form, the developable area, is in flood zone 1, yes.
I'm glad we got there at last. Councillor Schrader.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Just sort of tangential to that, I did notice on page 10 on the Anglian Water submission where it talks about surface water. they say that they're unable to provide comments on the suitability of the surface water management because it doesn't relate to Anglian Water. Who does it relate to? And have we had a comment from them?
Yeah, so it's Essex County Council, Lead Local Flood Authority. They have commented on the application. They have not raised any objections. There has been multiple to and fro between the applicant and them themselves, but the final drainage plans they've submitted and drainage strategy, they are satisfied with and have not raised objections to those.
Thank you very much. On page 12, I am a bit alarmed that we've had this request for developer contribution towards libraries of £5,057, which is not to be sniffed at. But effectively what we're saying is under the SIL regulations, no evidence has been put forward as to the requirements for the library contribution, and therefore the library contribution cannot be secured in this case. Now, I fully accept that, but I think it behooves the question of who should be providing this evidence and why haven't they? Because we're chucking away £5,000.
We have raised this, Councillor Sharda, with the Essex County Council. They continue to ask for the money, but what we haven't got is any scheme that it's going to go towards. So the monies will just sit in the County Council's library fund until that's found. So if they have some ideas of how they want to increase library facilities in our borough, then of course we would seek those contributions. But at the moment they would just go into a pot, and that's not the good use of any monies that come from scheme just to sit into a pot and not go anywhere. And they can't just use them randomly, they have to go into a scheme themselves. So if they had schemes for improving the libraries in Wickford, then we'd be saying, thank you very much, we'll take that £5,000 into that scheme and we'll use it. But they haven't got any schemes, and it can't be used for revenue, it has to be used for capital reasons. So once we get some ideas of what they want, then of course we can seek that money. But at the moment, we would be outside the SIL regulations to accept that money. So I'm as sorry as you are, and we have asked for that request a number of times to look at what their ambitions are, and them just telling us they're going to do something isn't good enough. It needs to be a clear idea. Like the school forecasting, they tell us what schools they're going to go towards. They tell us why they need those places. Happily, we will happily go and work with them on those. But libraries, the opposite.
Well, there, I would just I raised that knowing, I think, that was the answer. And I would just suggest we have some dual-hatted people in the room, and maybe through your own good offices, Chair, this is something that ought to be raised with the Cabinet member responsible for libraries at County Hall, because there's no point in them asking us for £5,000 towards libraries if we're not able to levy that, because they haven't provided us with the evidence that we need. And I thought that was a point worth making. My final question for Miss Ellis, obviously the report refers to the appeal decisions in relation to Kennel Lane, Maitland Lodge, and I think Dunton Road, and their material consideration. You will be aware that we have had another appeal decision only yesterday, happily, in relation to Potash Road, and you know what I'm going to ask, which is, does that appeal decision, I appreciate it's not in the report because we only got it yesterday, does that appeal decision have any bearing on our considerations this evening?
All right. Yes, I'm very much aware of Potash Road. Well, I'm going to say no, just because this is a completely different situation here. So Potash Road was a lush site, completely vacant from development. You know, the landscaping that was recognised by the inspector as being quite high in his view, his opinion. You know, he did dismiss the appeal largely on the Greenbelt grounds, you know, inappropriate development, etc. Here is a completely different situation. I mean, the scale of the site is not as big as what was put forward to Potash Road. Here we have PDL. I mean, that does weigh significantly in favour of the development. Also here we have affordable housing contribution that is above what our policy requires, whereas Potash Road was not. You know, they've put economic, environment and socially aspects forward, which we've all given moderate weight to as well. Okay, they may be similar to what Potash Road put forward, but ultimately the sites are very different in terms of the baseline starting point for both. hope that helps.
Yeah, obviously I accept that all the sites have their own particular complexities involved with them. Just finally, in relation to Councillor Rimmer mentioned the Greenbelt matrix, which is I've sort of made my own here. So what we're saying is here on the top of page 25, A, B, C, D, and E, and I've put here that basically we regard this particular parcel of Greenbelt, which I think is parcel 39, isn't it? So that is assessed as partly contributing to purposes A and C, and doesn't contribute to purposes B and D, and E is not applicable in this case. That's my understanding. Now that is based, as I understand it, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, on the Greenbelt Review 2017. Now, the one thing that did strike out at me from the Potash Road decision was that the inspector flatly disagreed with the assessment of potash, that particular parcel, in the 2017 Greenbelt Review. So, how satisfied are we that this site's appraisal in the 2017 review is any more robust than the Potash Road one?
Yeah, I did note that on the inspector's comments regarding the 2017 Greenbelt Review. I consider that the appraisal carried out here by the council in their Greenbelt Review, I'm satisfied with what's said. As I said, I keep going back to previous developed land. You know, this site is currently used and has been used previously for sort of a low workshops, sort of low activity that takes place on the site. You know, this part of the Greenbelt, this particular site itself, visually, aesthetically, is not as pleasing as Potash Road. So I'm satisfied with the review that's taking place for 2017 Greenbelt Review that we've carried out. And like I say, the sites are just completely different. The sites, you know, this has already been used to some extent for an employment purpose. And I think the quality of this part of the Greenbelt is not as high as what was at Potash Road.
So, Councillor Morris, I think the inspector did go into some quite details about the Potash Road site, and I think, I mean, at paragraph 33, the inspector goes into some quite detail about the nature of the site, and I actually the appeal site to be of an intrinsically high value in terms of landscape quality, natural condition and relative freedom from development. In my view, the site holds less capacity to accommodate housing than found by the council's background landscape studies and possesses far greater sensitivity to harmful effects of such development than these claim. I think it is that this site has got massively high values in terms of the Potash Road site, and I think that is, and he does go into some quite details looking at the other two sites, the Kennel Lane site and also Dunton Road site, and in those cases he does provide some more backing towards decisions that were made on those. So I think he doesn't undermine the decisions that have been made, but I think he takes the Potash Road as a very highly sensitive site, which I think, you know, I think some of us in making that decisions we made at putative reasons refusal, I think we all felt the same. And I think that's why the inspector obviously felt the same about that site during the processes that was felt by officers and obviously committee members.
Thank you, Councillor Schrader. I totally agree with your comments about the libraries. I found that when officer to officer doesn't actually work, sometimes members to members as a two-prong attack does actually produce results. Next speaker is Councillor Blake.
I'll keep this short and sweet. The site that is there at the moment, the caravan site, and are they all legal, or is there any illegal activity there?
There's no illegal activity on this site.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Was anyone else wishing to ask questions? Councillor Rimmer wishes to come back.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow up on Councillor Blake's question, looking at page 9 and the relevant planning history, I'm just curious to understand, and if that could be unpacked to me, for me, sorry, in terms of the lawfulness of this land and that hard standing, which is obviously what we're talking about in terms of the 43%, was only granted in October of 23. Obviously, I'm and I'm too eager there. So I'm unless I was asleep, I don't think that was by committee, obviously. And this is a piece of greenbelt, so I just wanted to understand how that all occurred.
Yeah, so the LDC that was submitted, it wasn't for the lawful use of the site as it was being used then. I mean, the site has been used historically for, I think, 20 odd years as sort of a low-scale employment workshop type. The caravans on the site are only there for storage. They're not lived in, they're for storage. So that LDC was actually establishing the previous developed land and what we considered to be PDL, in line with the Maitland Lodge decision that came forward, that established that site was completely PDL. So that's what that LDC related to. I know I've read the description of that and I can see how it's worded, but that was just establishing the previous developed land on that site and what percentage we considered to be PDL. And as I said previously, that squiggly line on that location plan, we considered to be previous, or here you can see it clearer in the grey, we considered to be previous developed land. So that's what that LDC was establishing. It wasn't establishing the use of the site. As I said, that's been historically used 20 odd years as some low-scale employment, storage of caravans. So it was just looking at the PDL of that site.
Right, if there's no other members wishing to ask questions, there's a couple of things that I'd like to bring up, if I may. Ms Ellis, as you will be aware, there are a few discrepancies in the report. On page 5, we're talking about a vehicular access, but the conditions are talking about accesses in the plural. So if you can just clarify that for me.
Yeah, I have amended that. It's only one access onto London Road. There's not more than one, despite what that condition said in the OSS report. So there is an update sheet, and I have updated the wording of the condition there to remove out points to just point. And I hope that satisfies you, Chairman.
Yes, and you've also corrected the on page 14 where it refers to a care home, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I have made a mistake by putting in comments from Essex Police. It referred to dwellings and care home. I've now deleted that bit. It's just dwellings. There is no care home on this site. And also, I did amend condition 2 to put the application, the timing of the reserved matters. That applications for all approved matters to be submitted to local planning authority for the expiration of 3 years from the date of the outline permission, should that be successful.
I thank you for that. And also, could you, for the benefit of everyone here, explain what a priority junction is, please?
So the plan for you shows layout of the site. I said layouts for reserved matters. We are considering access here. Essex County Council Highway Authority have been consulted, have not raised an objection. However, a priority junction is just basically a T-junction. So there is no traffic lights. You just pull up to the stop and give priority or give way to oncoming traffic. So essentially, it's a T-junction.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Myers.
Thank you. So obviously this is an outline application for up to 49 houses. I just wondered if there was I mean, do forgive me, I've had a particularly busy week and not gone through all the conditions. But it was previously said it was up to 65 originally, so I wondered if there was a condition in there to say that the outline would be only up to 49 and no extension on that.
Yes, so previously the application that was submitted was for 65 dwellings. However, we worked with the agent and reduced the numbers down to 49. There is a condition 5 that says the submission of reserved matters application pursuant to this outline permission shall together provide no more than 49 dwellings.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I believe that Councillor Rimmer would like to ask another question.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry about this. Basically, the ECC officer for landscaping, it just says in terms of that, comments received from ECC landscaping have been incorporated into the body of the report, but not really, it doesn't tell me what the comments were and means searching out for them. but my curiosity, just to make it easier rather than detailing all the comments, is really, are there hedgerows on this site, and any ancient hedgerows that need protecting? Because just in the aerial view, it looks like there might be. So it was just to understand that. Thank you.
So Essex County Council give us comments on landscaping, so they provide us with a landscape value impact assessment basically. So from page 33 onwards it's titled landscaping, and their comments are incorporated within the reports. So they carry out the assessment of the existing landscaping, the value of it, etc. And their comments, as I say, are incorporated from page 33 to 40. So there's quite a few pages there. Where they, like I say, they assess the baseline landscaping, they look at the value of it, and then they kind of give us a view on the application and the documents that are provided to us. With regards to ancient hedgerow, there are none on site that's been identified. We've got arboricultural reports, assessments that have been submitted to us. We've had our own arboricultural officer assess that. You know, there will be some removal of trees. However, I mean, here, I think it's important to keep the trees in the northwestern corner, which you'll see on the plan for you, those groups of trees, which are looking to be retained as part of the application. I mean, these are of a good value, whereas the shrubbery that's being removed on the right-hand side next to the boundary there is sort of not of as good a value. But there are no ancient hedgerows, as you asked. So.
Yes, Councillor Rimmer.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for pointing out the particulars where they've commented. Obviously, they're mentioning overgrown hedgerows that form the boundaries of the former plot land, and obviously there's the hedgerow with the corridor, the River Crouch, which are also overgrown. I just wanted to check, obviously, a layperson question again, apologies, but what would be the definition of a hedgerow being ancient or not ancient in terms of years? Because obviously if it's the former plot lands, we could be going back a century at least, couldn't we?
Well, may well be, back to war times. But I'll just look at what the definition of what sort of criteria there is to meet. I mean, like I say, ancient hedgerows have not been identified on this site. I've actually pulled up my site photos, so I've only included a few of them, but you can see sort of the view there on the right-hand side that looks towards the rear of the site, towards the River Crouch, and you can kind of see the boundaries there either side, and you can kind of see the boundaries there behind the caravans. That's the boundary that runs along the back of the plotlands, actually, Sutherlands Avenue. Charles is just looking into what the criteria is, but so there is no ancient hedgerows that have been identified on this site. What the criteria is and the process you need to go through to have that identified and potentially, I'm not quite too sure actually.
They have to deal with hedgerows only through the biodiversity game plan.
Okay.
Loss of habitat would have been picked up through that condition. So condition 19.
19, okay. I've been informed that via condition 19 there's a biodiversity plan that needs to be submitted, so any hedgerows that would need to be provided, any information on hedgerows would need to be provided up and picked up through that particular condition.
Right. If there are... Ms Lyons?
A hedgerow is basically ancient hedgerows are protected if they're at least 30 years old and meet at least one of the criteria. Marked or all part of a parish boundary, existed since 1850 and contains archaeological features such as monuments. So that's under the Countryside Hedgerows Protection and Management. That's from gov.uk. So basically, they have to serve a purpose and been on a parish boundary for since 1850. So I don't think it's an ancient woodland. But I think the point is that biodiversity game plan, if they're going to remove it, they have to make that up at that biodiversity position. So they are responsible to deal with those in going forward.
Before we move on, wonder, officers, when you're speaking, can you make sure that the microphone is in front of you, because people are having difficulty hearing? And I'm sure that applies to the audience as much as everybody else. Okay, I think we've done the questions to death. So I'm going to take us out of session because I have David Phillips, who is the applicant, who wishes to address us on this particular item. So I'll ask him to come forwards to the microphone. Does he know which one? Yeah. And Mr. Phillips, you will have 3 minutes, which is indicated on my desk here by the traffic lights. When it turns red, your time will be up, and that time will start from the moment you turn your microphone on. Thank you.
Firstly, many thanks for the opportunity to present our scheme to you this evening. This is not a speculative development and can be built out within the next 5 years. The directors of Redcomb have been active in the Wickford area for over 20 years, including the delivery of 85 high-quality homes at Lower Southend Road. Redcomb has worked with the family who own the site and council officers with the aim of securing a local consent. The detail of the proposals has been fully set out within the positive officer's recommendation, and I'm sure officers will further address any detailed points that members may wish to raise. So through a collaborative process, including consultation with all surrounding properties, the scheme has been reduced by some 25%. The proposals will now deliver 3 and 4 bedroom family houses at a density of just 16 dwellings per hectare to fit with the character of the area. All significant trees are to be retained and significant additional tree planting is proposed. New open space will be available to local people on a site not currently accessible to the public. 35% of all the homes will be affordable to meet a local need. The scheme will also deliver a financial package of almost £500,000 towards physical and social infrastructure, including towards projects that are identified in the infrastructure delivery plan. Yes, the site is in the green belt, but given the extent of previously developed and degraded land, as we've obviously had some discussion on this evening already, it assumes very different characteristics to other sites that have recently come before this committee. No jobs will be lost as a result of the proposals, given the exclusive use of the buildings is currently for hobby-related activities by family members. The mobile home storage business is also carried out solely by members of the family. Except site access, to be determined this evening, the application is an outline form, which means that matters of detail, including design and layout, will still need to be approved by the council at a later stage. To be clear, this does not leave it open to renegotiate the terms of these proposals. If approved, this application will be governed by an absolute upper limit of 49 homes within a set of clearly defined parameter plans, which will place very strict controls on such matters as layout, building heights, built form, and the interrelationship between new and existing properties. Further design controls will also be conditioned. So given the many benefits of this scheme, which have set out in the officer's recommendation, I commend this application for approval. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's bring the committee back into session for members' comments on the application. Councillor Blake.
It's one of the things, I'm repeating myself a bit like some of these reports where they keep on referring to Kennel Lane and everything else regarding the green belt. So I'm going to repeat myself from my last committee meeting that I was at regarding Southend Road. Because it will tidy up an area, in my opinion, there's no reason to pass something on green belt. We hear this time and time again. And I have to say, to be honest with you, I thought the presentation tonight from officers was absolutely superb. One of the best I've heard for a long while, so well done on that. It was excellent. Cleared up a lot of issues that I had in my head. However, there was a however. I still come back to this issue, and I mentioned it last time, so I'm going to do it again. If we'd taken the same attitude as we did on this because it ties up the area, then we'd have been in a lot of trouble regarding Dale Farm, wouldn't we? And I'm reporting, and I will keep coming back every time to this committee and say exactly the same thing if I have to, because a lot of the stuff that's in here in the report as to why we should pass it on Greenbelt is also exactly the same in every report that we get. I just heard the gentleman there, it's degraded land. Yeah, but again, as I say, that's no reason to pass an application on green belt. I'm pretty certain, having listened to Councillor Rimmer speaking just now, that he's going to have some a few words on the issues that he raised, the badgers and the hedgerows and everything like that. But just purely on the basis of tidying up an area, I think it's just not an excuse to start building on green belt. Because what you're saying to people, tell you what, you get in the area, you make it look like a dumping ground, and then put a planning application in and say it's going to tidy up the area. And you know what, this planning committee just might pass it. It's not going to happen, not by me on this time.
Thank you, Councillor Blake. Councillor Brockman.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the gentleman who spoke just now. And Kevin, I totally agree with what you're saying. My problem is the traffic going onto the London Road, because it's such a busy road anyway. And to be quite honest with you, it's just going to cause even more troubles going down there. It's bad enough as it is. I mean, we've got the junction with Castledon Road and Belmont and everything. That's a traffic hotspot. There's lots of accidents there. It's just going to add to it. So I'm afraid I'm mindful to not really vote with it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockman. Councillor Rimmer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I really have these concerns now about the hedgerows, and I've looked at the definition of ancient hedgerows in more detail on the gov.uk website, and it goes into a much greater detail in terms of the specifications that are needed based on the length of the hedgerow, the location of the hedgerow, and the importance of the hedgerow. It seems to meet the length, it seems to meet the location criteria in the sense that this is near land that's being used for agriculture. It seems to, the question in my head is whether it's actually met the importance, and I personally don't feel I've got enough evidence to say that it does or it doesn't, because I have nothing here, as far as I can see, about what species of wooded species are in the hedgerow or not, which is one of the criteria, which would be a straight away, it's got all three cards there, and it's ancient hedgerow. I don't have any understanding of how long the hedgerows have actually existed for, other than that we know that they were the former boundaries of plotlands. I don't know how long the plotlands were in existence, and I don't know whether these hedgerows pre-existed those or not, and that actually that land was used previously for that. And it's an important consideration, because planning decisions are being made in terms of protecting the hedgerows, and it's as part of that, and appeals inspectors have actually backed planning decisions that have refused planning on the basis of protecting ancient hedgerows, and we've got to and the criteria that's laid out here hasn't really been unpacked for me, and we're the ones that are having to make the ultimate judgment on this. So I don't feel I've got enough evidence to actually make a judgment on that. I would be minded to defer on this, but obviously if I can get evidence other than that, I'll take a look at it.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, this land is, as we've seen previously, developed land. As far as I'm concerned, if the land was fine to build on before, then all of a sudden it's not fine to build on now, according to Councillor Blake. I don't quite understand his point there. Councillor Blake and I have this disagreement quite often here about the point of land that's not being used for anything. As far as I'm concerned, if there's something that's not benefiting the people of Basildon, then and there's an opportunity to use that land to benefit the people of Basildon, then that should be considered. The officers have said, and the applicant has said as well, that the number of dwellings has been reduced from 65 to 49, and well, congratulations to the officers for negotiating that, because that is a significant drop, which will make the whole area nicer to live in general. And they're also that these are the types of houses that we that we need in Basildon. I know we need a lot of different types of houses in Basildon, and this is certainly a big part of that. So yeah, I'm wanting to support this application for those reasons. It's previously developed land. It's land that is not particularly good quality for Greenbelt, and the officers have done well to negotiate a better outcome for the site and the future people living there.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. I find it interesting, some of the comments that have been made. Councillor Blake compared this to Dale Farm and previously developed land and tidying it up, but what about the Dogs Trust on the corner of the 132 and the 127? That was being used as a boot sale, so that was used as an excuse by the planning committee to give permission for the Dogs Trust to be built there. I mean, there are precedents in both sides, but I'd like to sort of draw your attention to on pages 21-22. There's an excerpt from the one of the planning appeals, which Councillor Baker also brought to our notice. This one was the planning inspector for Kennel Lane, and he sort of said that the evidence base weighs very heavily in favour of the appeal proposal. What I think he's saying to us is that, reading the whole of that as well as that bit, that if you want to go against what your evidence, one lot of evidence is showing, then you've got to have evidence for what you're proposing. We have got a Greenbelt survey, which Ms Ellis says she agrees that it is accurate, which says that this is not really of much value as Greenbelt. So therefore, if we turn this down in favour of Greenbelt, are saying we don't agree with that. But what evidence have we got for that? Councillor Rimmer is saying he needs evidence about the hedgerows. We need to make our judgments based on evidence. Now, we've also got the fact that one of the paragraphs in the MPPF, paragraph 154, is talking about limited infill or the partial or complete redevelopment of previously developed land, whether redundant or in continuing use. Well, this is actually previously developed land, as you have heard. So therefore, it is a consideration as to whether what the value of the Greenbelt here is. So that's some evidence that needs to be taken into consideration. With regards to the traffic on the 129, which I agree with Councillor Brockman, is heavy, but this is 49 extra dwellings, which is going to have a very small amount of weight on the traffic. And in fact, the highways at Essex County have measured that and say that they think that it will be limited and that it's not going to be something that we should be turning it down on. So again, our evidence base isn't there. The County Council doesn't agree with that particular point. And if we turn this down, we have got to have reasons for turning it down. Evidence, which I do not think is here. So I will be voting in favour of it. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Firstly, Madam Chairman, I note that the evidence base of the 2022 withdrawn local plan is a material consideration to this application. Approximately 43% of the application site is in the green belt is considered to be previously developed land, as we heard earlier, and 57% of the site is undeveloped land in the green belt. The 43% previously developed land comprises light industrial and storage uses, with the adverse impact on neighbouring residents, particularly those on London Road and Sugden Avenue within close proximity of the site. The report emphasises, however, that around 42% of the application site area will be laid out as public open space, As today, the whole site is not accessible to the public. This would seem to be a positive outcome for local people should planning permission be given. The report states that it is considered that the development would result in limited harm to the openness of the green belt in this location, and limited harm to purposes A, the proposal would not result in the unrestricted sprawl of a large built-up area, and purpose C, to assist in safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. This harm, in addition to the harm of inappropriateness, carries substantial weight. Landscape officers have evaluated the landscape value of the site and concluded that the site is of low, medium overall value, and I respect this conclusion. Once again, the council is being held to ransom over its inability to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply, even though the council has given planning permission for some 6,654 homes, which equates to 5 years plus. However, 4,711 of them do not meet the MPPF's requirement of being demonstrably deliverable, and once again this fact affords a very substantial weight as a very special circumstance. Madam Chairman, I must once again protest that the planning inspector stated very clearly in the Potash Road appeal regarding housing requirements that, and I quote, a persistent and long-standing failure to meet Basildon's requirements in terms of house building, when we all know it is the developers who have the planning permission, it is the developers who don't develop, and it is the developers who don't deliver that continually puts this council where it is today with only 1.85 years housing supply. In conclusion, Madam Chairman, firstly, very special circumstances exist in this application which justify building in the green belt. Secondly, national green belt policies do not provide a clear reason for refusing the application. Thirdly, Madam Chairman, I must say I am really not worried about the hedgerows, whether it's ancient or just old or just planted. Fourthly, the application would contribute to the council's 5-year housing supply only, of course, if the developer actually develops, as he promised earlier, over 5 years. I therefore, Madam Chairman, agree with the recommendation in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. Councillor Myers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with a lot of what Councillor Moore said in terms of being held to account by government because developers are not developing. It is frankly unjust about what we've done over the last few years to approve, and yet nothing has been done on these sites. I look at each site individually, as I did, as Councillor Blake mentioned about Southend Road. I look at each site individually of what it proves. I do give significant weight to the PDL status of it. A large area of the site being used for, it's kind of up and down hilly a little bit, with outbuildings, hard standing, and that I don't take into account tidying up an area because I don't agree with that at all. It's not why I'm making decisions about tidying up somewhere. I'm just looking at it as previously developed land of 43% previously developed land there. We're, I believe, taking over with this particular proposal an extra 13% for the houses, and the rest of it to be kept to open space, including suds by the river at the northeast corner. Sorry, turn that around. Northeast corner. I don't agree that this site particularly feels many obligations of Greenbelt, including Measure A, because of where it's situated in between where plotlands have already previously been developed and delivered on Sugden Avenue and also lost appeals on those as well. So it doesn't prevent urban sprawl in that respect, in my eyes, despite what I may have said against the application for the GridServe application between Basildon and Wickford, where it was the opening of urban sprawl between Basildon and Wickford. I believe that all of this site, Sugden Avenue, despite being different wards, is Wickford as one. I don't believe it's actually encroaching the urban sprawl in that area. In terms of openness to the countryside, I mean, you're separated by a river, large trees, hedgerows on the eastern boundary up towards Castleton Road. It's already, as I said, previously developed land for workshops, storage, and whatnot. So in terms of openness to the countryside, I don't believe it really fulfills that either. The scheme, as has been mentioned, and if promised by the man who spoke earlier, can be delivered within the 5 years, then of course it will help towards our current issue of 1.85 years of housing land supply. And for those reasons, and in my personal opinion about how I feel about each application on its own merits, I'll be voting for this one this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Before we call Councillor Rimmer again, I believe the officers might have some answers to your hedgerow problem.
Thank you. I'm just about to share my screen with you all. Oh, hang on. How do I share that? Why is it not coming up?
Go to Teams and then share it from there.
Sorry, technical issues. There we go, that's the plan I want to show. So this is a indicative green infrastructure plan. I'm not quite sure what hedgerows you're referring to, Councillor Rimmer. But as I said before, there are no ancient hedgerows identified on this site. In terms of the procedures, in terms of what you go through to protect them, I'm not quite too sure. But as you will see here, there's the squiggly green line that talks about reinforcing boundaries of the green belt. You will see there are some sort of, the dark greens are proposed trees, all the light area are sort of existing. So that there in front of you is an indicative green infrastructure plan. We've looked at the arboricultural impact assessment that's been provided, where it talks about hedgerows on the eastern and western boundaries, and says that the hedgerows were species poor and managed to size but not to the top. So the hedgerows that were identified are considered to be poor, however, and of low ecology value. However, they will be retained as part of the proposed development, and we can condition that as part of the proposal if that satisfies you at all. I say I don't know exactly what hedgerow you're referring to in terms of ancient. So I know you keep referring to plotlands on the north west boundary of the site, Studlands Avenue. But I didn't know if there was a particular area that you had concerns with. But I'm hoping what I've just said satisfied your concerns.
Okay, Councillor Rimmer, you can respond to that, and you wish also to speak.
Yeah, I'll come back to that. Essentially, it's the ECC landscaping comments that have been incorporated that talk about overgrown hedgerow, and they also say that they border with the former plotlands, and they also say they border with the Crouch corridor. But I can see on the pictures, and you showed a picture of overgrown hedgerow as well, I would put it to you that what's just been read out in terms of the arboriculturalist report has looked at the quality of that, and not actually the condition to meet whether it's ancient hedgerow or not in terms of the wood species, whereas there's a whole list of wood species on the gov.uk website which can go into, and it hasn't actually identified that those wood species. It could have simply said there are no wood species as characterised in the ancient hedgerow conditions, but it doesn't say that. So I still don't feel I've got enough evidence on that. On the PDL, I'm a bit shocked that members are getting really hung up on this, because the report is quite clear in 5.17, isn't it? Sorry, no, I've jumped a bit. Sorry, 5.1.7 on page 23, where it's actually saying, whilst the area of land identified as PDL is proposed to be redeveloped, approximately 57% of the site is undeveloped land in the green belt, and therefore, as the whole site cannot be considered as PDL, the development is deemed inappropriate, by definition harmful to the green belt. So we're testing on the wrong things here when it comes to that. We're looking at the site as a whole, not just the element that is PDL. In respect to the element that is PDL, I would suggest that actually in terms of the openness of the green belt, because it's flat, and because caravans are temporary, that the harm to the green belt of flat, hard standing compared to buildings of a certain height and certain density and certain massing is actually considerably more than flat, hard standing. So we shouldn't really just take that as a carte blanche for building over our green belt and actually destroying and harming the openness of it. I think we really need to not get hung up with the fact that there's some hard standing there at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Schrader.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, we've kicked around a few different points during the course of the debate. I mean, obviously, the elephant in the room is that it is greenbelt, 3 hectares of it, and we know, and Councillor Moore referred to this at some length, the issues we have in terms of 5-year land supply and our housing delivery, and how that has impacted on the defensible refusals when they've gone to appeal. What it seems to me with this particular application, we know that the tilted balance doesn't apply, and it's accepted in the report, as Councillor Rimmer just outlined, that the application does represent inappropriate development in the greenbelt, and nobody disputes that. But it's this issue of localised harm, and as Councillor Rimmer was just saying, this business of the previously developed land, and whether the previously developed land that exists on the site, I would tend to agree with him that probably it's not harmful to the openness of the greenbelt as it presently stands, and we're talking about a significantly more developed site, because you'll be replacing that hard standing with houses. So that obviously will have an impact on the openness. Now, this is kind of a departure from the debates that we've had in the past, because we've always talked about there's greenbelt and then there's greenbelt. There's not different types of greenbelt. It's not really greenbelt because it's in a particular location, or it's not. No, it's either greenbelt or it isn't greenbelt. But actually, what we increasingly find now is we're talking about greenbelt matrices, and to what extent the greenbelt is contributing to the greenbelt, and that's probably inevitable because of the position we're in as a council. So we're now sitting in a sort of cheese pairing over whether or not a particular parcel of greenbelt is fully contributing to the greenbelt objectives or not, which is kind of why I asked all those questions about the Potash Road appeal, because a lot of these assessments of the greenbelt are underpinned by this 2017 review, which the appeal inspector in the case of Potash Road flatly disagreed with completely. Now, the thing that I think is sort of beavering away in my brain is the fact that I've always been reasonably consistent that I don't make these differentiations with Greenbelt. Something is either Greenbelt or it isn't. And for me, it always rests on very special circumstances. Are the very special circumstances there that justify the development? And actually what we've not really touched on very much is, you know, the affordable housing and the benefits of the scheme. It seems to me clear that there are going to be benefits from the scheme. But where I'm still in a quandary is, because I have this niggling doubt now in my mind about the 2017 review and the extent to which this particular site contributes to the Greenbelt. I can see the argument, I can see why it's completely different to Potash Road. It's probably more similar, in fact, to Maitland Lodge as a site, because that was quite a small site and that was substantially developed already as well. And we saw how that appeal went. So to be fair, I'm not sitting here sort of thinking, oh, well, we'll just hang our hats on the fact that we finally got in a win on Potash Road and completely ignore the myriad of other ones that we've lost. And I am conscious of the fact that those of us who are minded to vote against, if we won the day, we would have to put forward reasons for refusal that we think would stand up at an appeal. So I find myself in a real difficulty because I can see the merits of the scheme. I can understand the rationale for why this particular parcel of Greenbelt is not fully contributing to those Greenbelt objectives. But I am struggling to get away from the fact that, as I've always said with these things, the Greenbelt is the Greenbelt, and the Greenbelt should only be released as part of the local plan process, as part of, you know, with that all the democratic scrutiny that goes through the Regulation 19 consultations and by going through the examination in public with the planning inspector. And I'm uncomfortable about voting to build on the Greenbelt unless there are those really demonstrable, very special circumstances. And at the moment, I feel that actually it's quite a finely balanced case. I'm not hearing an argument that really persuades me that those very special circumstances are there. More, it feels like an attempt to kind of poo-poo this part of Greenbelt and say, well, it's not really very Greenbelty. So that's where I'm sitting at the moment. I'm still very much undecided. So there's still time to persuade me if anyone wants to have a crack at it.
Well, since nobody else has indicated that, I beg your pardon, Councillor Brown, please come in.
That's okay, thank you, I appreciate that. I think that it's really important tonight that we focus on, as our chair and as Councillor Moore has said, on the evidence provided us within this report. I am not an expert on highways, I am not an expert on hedgerows, I am not an expert on any of the things that our expert reports come to us. And I think it's a waste of our time to say, I want to know the definition of everything here because I might not agree with that definition. We know on planning that there's lots of aspects of planning legislation that many of our members we do not agree with. However, we very rarely agree with Essex County Council's assessments on highways. We very rarely agree with many reports that come back from us from Essex County Council. I mean, the libraries this evening is beyond ridiculous. The fact that we could have a contribution towards libraries, but Essex County Council have not put forward a project for which we can contribute. So I think it is a waste of our time arguing about whether or not we, as individuals, agree with legal definitions of different things. Because we don't get to change that. That's central government, that's our Essex County councillors that get to do that. It doesn't take away from the fact that it is frustrating. I think that, I don't always disagree with Alex, but on this instance I do. I think that Greenbelt serves a purpose for our communities, that having Greenbelt in itself is something that's positive for many of our residents. However, here's a however, I'm sorry, Councillor Blake. However, no, I think it's important that we recognise that it does serve a purpose and that it in itself is a benefit. What the NPPF asks us to do is, in light of not having a land supply, not having a local plan, we just recently got a letter from Mr Gove chastising us for being one of the worst performing councils in terms of planning, local planning, etc. in the country, which is very concerning, but that's not for a discussion for tonight. What is for discussion for tonight is that the MPPF, and that's what we have to look at, those rules and regulations that central government give us to determine planning, has said that that their conclusion, the way in which we decide to vote tonight, is about a balance. And part of that balance and that consideration is the social, the economic, and those different factors that go through in the report as to the benefits to our residents that this type of development can come. And part of that, yeah, is affordable housing. Part of that is contributing to the land supply. You know, I share Councillor Moore's frustration about how that's calculated and how we're held to ransom on that. But that's central government. Our Conservative government has made those regulations, and that's what the standard that we have to fulfil. But part of that balance, it says that you need to take into account, the quality of this green belt. Green belt, yes, is a legal definition that covers all green belt, but the MPPF says you have to consider, does it meet those tests? And as Councillor Adder pointed out earlier, out of those tests, it only partially meets 2 of them. So Greenbelt isn't all of equal value. And the MPPF tells us we have to consider that. I mean, in our report on page 27, 5.124, it says that if this was removed, but however, its removal will not have a significant impact on the role of the remaining green belt in this location due to its limited contribution in the first instance. So what it's saying is if we lost that, it's not actually going to have a huge harmful impact because it wasn't doing what green belt is meant to do to start with. And that is part of a balanced consideration that we have to take on board. The proportion of the land previously developed, that is something in the MPF that says holds significant weighting, and that we need to consider that. And I think that, for me, the balance lies in, tips me towards supporting this application this evening, because it is pre-developed land. Greenbelt is not fulfilling its full contribution to what we need it to do. We do have a land supply shortage, and the affordable housing contribution is hugely significant. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councillor Brown, for explaining the differences in Greenbelt, which I think is what the Greenbelt review was doing, and had made the decision that certain parts of Greenbelt were better than others. That's why some parts were put into the previous plan and some parts weren't. So the other thing I will say to Councillor Schrader is if he votes against it, he's got to find a good reason to do so. And that being the case, if nobody else wishes to challenge me on my comments, which is unusual, I'm going... No. I'm going to put the application to the vote. The recommendation can be found on page 60 with the conditions from page 60 to 68, and the reasons for those conditions is in our update sheet. So therefore, when I can find page 60, I have to read it out. Right, the recommendation is that that planning application number 23/00881/OUT be granted conditional planning permission subject to no call-in powers being executed by the Secretary of State, the completion of a Section 106 agreement to secure 35% of affordable housing on site, together with financial contributions towards education provision, healthcare improvements, local delivery pilot scheme, sustainable transport, bus stop improvements, employment and skills, compliance with the habitat regulations, monitoring fees, payment of the local planning authority's professional and legal fees associated with completion of the Section 106 legal agreement as set out in Section 5.22 and subject to the conditions set out at the end of the report with any amendments that might be necessary up to the issue of the decision notice. And I will point out that Condition 2 has been amended to read, when I can find it, that application for approval of all of the reserve matters shall be made to the local planning authority before the expiration of 3 years from the date of the outline permission. And I'll ask you all to give me a show of hands for those in favour of that recommendation, please. So that's 6 in favour, and those against, 7 in favour, and those against? 4 against. I think that might be carried. Thank you for that, members of the committee, and I'm going to call a 10-minute break. Please be back here by 9:22 by the clock on the wall. Thank you.